My name's Charlotte Whitfield, and I've been sitting on this story for almost 2 years. Not because I was ashamed, but because every time I tried to tell it, I didn't know where to start. Do you start with the money? Do you start with the meeting? Do you start with the moment your own father looks at you across a living room in Pasadena, California, and tells you, quietly, devastatingly, that he thinks you're a thief? I'm a British woman. I grew up in Surrey, outside London. I moved to California at 24 for a graduate program, fell in love with the state and stayed. My family followed a few years later. My parents, my brother, eventually my uncle. We built a life here together, a real life. Barbecues in the backyard, Thanksgiving that somehow blended into our very English Christmas traditions, Sunday calls that turned into Sunday visits because we all ended up within 20 minutes of each other in the San Gabriel Valley. I loved that. I was proud of that. I had helped make that possible, and I want you to hold on to that image, the backyard, the family, the closeness, because what I'm about to tell you happened inside that family, to me, and it almost destroyed me. My family built a business here in California, wholesale distribution, started small, grew steadily over about 15 years. My father was the founder, my uncle came aboard early, my brother joined in his mid-20s, and me, I came in as the finance director. I had the qualifications, the experience, and the trust. For 6 years, I managed every penny of that business with complete transparency. We had a joint business account at a major bank in downtown Los Angeles, 4 signatories. Any withdrawal above a set threshold required 2 of us to sign. That rule existed to protect us all. Then, one Sunday afternoon, warm California sunshine outside, completely at odds with what was happening inside, my father called a family meeting at the house. Everyone was already seated when I arrived. Nobody looked up. My father stood, and in a voice I had never once heard from him in 32 years, hollow, careful, broken, he said, "Charlotte, $70,000 is missing from the account, and we believe it was you." Sunshine outside, silence inside, and the floor disappeared. I want you to imagine, really imagine what that moment does to a person. I am not someone who falls apart easily. I left England at 24 on my own. I built a career in a country that wasn't mine. I am, by nature and by necessity, composed. I do not crumble. But standing in the doorway of my parents' home in Pasadena, with the California light coming through the curtains and my entire family refusing to meet my eyes, I felt something I had never felt before, a complete and total erasure. Like every version of myself I had ever been, the daughter, the sister, the professional, the person they had trusted, had been replaced, in that room, by a single word: thief. I said the only thing I could. I didn't take it. Silence. My father explained what he called the evidence. Over 4 months, 9 withdrawals had been made from the business account, each one carefully kept below the threshold that would have required a second signature, each one between $6,000 and $9,000. 9 transactions, just over $70,000 total. Because I managed the books, because I knew the threshold rules better than anyone, because I had the deepest understanding of the account structure, the family had concluded I was the only one capable of doing this so precisely. My uncle slid a printed bank statement across the coffee table without looking at me. I picked it up, looked at the dates, and immediately I saw it. 2 of those dates were days I was out of state. I had flown to San Francisco for a 2-day finance conference. I had my boarding pass on my phone, my hotel confirmation, my conference registration with timestamps. I said this clearly, calmly. I wasn't even in Los Angeles on 2 of these dates. I have proof. My brother who I had helped settle into California, whose first apartment deposit I had co-signed, looked up and said, You could have had someone else do it. You know every detail of the account. In that moment, I understood. This was not a conversation. This was not an investigation. This was a verdict being delivered to my face by the people I loved most in the world. I left, drove home to my apartment in Arcadia, and the silence that followed was the loudest thing I have ever experienced. My mother stopped calling. My brother removed me from the family WhatsApp. My uncle contacted the business solicitor and had my account access frozen pending review. 6 years of trust, gone, on a Sunday afternoon in Pasadena. I won't pretend those 2 weeks were manageable. They weren't. I cried in my car outside my apartment building at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night because I didn't want the neighbors to hear me through the walls. I called my best friend back in England, a 3-hour time difference, because she was the only person on the planet I trusted completely. I went to work every day and sat at my desk and did my job because the alternative was falling apart, and I have never been someone who falls apart. But underneath the grief and the fury and the loneliness, something else was running, something very quiet and very determined. If I didn't take that money, and I knew with every cell in my body that I hadn't, then someone else did. And money in a California bank account doesn't simply vanish. Every transaction leaves a record. Every counter withdrawal leaves a signature, a timestamp, a face on a security camera. Whoever took $70,000 from that account had been inside a bank branch multiple times, and there were cameras. I drove to the downtown Los Angeles branch on a Wednesday morning, alone. I sat across from the branch manager and explained the situation clearly. Joint business account, significant unauthorized withdrawals. I was a signatory being accused. I had documented evidence placing me out of state on at least 2 transaction dates. I needed to know what records existed. First question, security footage. Do you have it? Standard retention, she told me, is 90 days. The earlier withdrawals had passed that window, but 5 of the 9 most recent transactions were still on record. Second question, were these made at the counter or ATM? She checked. 6 of the 9 were counter transactions, in-person withdrawals, identification presented, withdrawal slip signed. 6 times, someone stood at a teller window in downtown Los Angeles and took money from my family's account. 6 times, the overhead camera recorded it. I asked whether a signatory could formally request footage review under a fraud investigation. She made a call, said yes. I signed the paperwork immediately. I drove back to Arcadia through mid-morning LA traffic, and for the first time in 2 weeks, I felt something shift. Not relief, not yet, but certainty, the kind that sits in your chest like a stone and holds you steady. 8 days, and the camera would show what I already knew. It was not me. 8 days later, I returned to the downtown LA branch. I had not told my family I was doing this. I had not contacted my father, my brother, or my uncle. I had spoken to a friend who had some legal background. She advised me to document everything independently before involving anyone else. So I came alone with a folder containing my boarding passes, hotel confirmation from the San Francisco conference, time-stamped receipts, and a written statement I had prepared myself, cross-referencing every transaction date against my documented whereabouts. The fraud investigator was already in the conference room when I arrived. She was a composed, professional woman, mid-50s, the kind of calm that comes from having seen a great many things and remaining steady through all of them. She had a laptop set up. She explained that footage had been retrieved from the 5 dates within the 90-day retention window, all counter transactions, all requiring in-person identification and a signed withdrawal form. She pressed play. Elevated camera angle, standard bank CCTV, timestamp in the upper right corner. A figure approached the teller counter, wearing a dark baseball cap pulled low. I watched the screen. You can pull a cap over your forehead. You cannot change your jaw. You cannot change the breadth of your shoulders or the specific way you carry yourself when you walk or the shape of your hands when you set them flat on a counter and wait. I knew within seconds. It was my brother. I don't have adequate words for what happened inside me in that moment. I had spent 8 days telling myself, just get to the footage, Charlotte, just get there and it will be over. I had imagined relief. I had imagined vindication. I had imagined some version of justice that felt clean and complete. What I actually felt was a grief so sudden and so physical, it was like something had struck me in the chest. Because this was James, my brother, the one I had helped move to California, the one whose first job in the US I had helped him find, the one who had sat in our parents' living room in Pasadena and watched our father call me a thief and said nothing, who suggested with a straight face that I might have arranged for someone else to do it. The investigator confirmed that the ID used was a secondary business signatory card, one that all 4 of us held. She explained the bank was now obligated to flag the matter as suspected internal fraud. A formal report would be generated. The relevant parties would be notified. I walked out of that building into the Los Angeles midday heat, stood on the sidewalk, did not move. $70,000, and my own brother had let me carry it. Here is what nobody tells you about being vindicated. It doesn't feel like winning. It feels like surviving something you should never have had to survive in the first place. The bank's formal fraud report reached my father within days. My uncle was notified, and 48 hours after that documentation landed, my brother drove to the house in Pasadena. He confessed to my father that same evening, sat in the living room, the same room where I had been accused, and told the truth, that he had been taking money from the business account over 4 months, that he had accumulated serious gambling debts in Las Vegas, trips none of us had known about, that he had been drowning in shame and couldn't bring himself to ask the family for help, so he had taken what he believed he could access quietly, carefully, in amounts small enough to not immediately trigger alarm. And when the money was discovered missing and the family needed someone to blame, he had let them choose me, because he was terrified of what telling the truth would cost him. My mother called me the following morning. I could hear in her voice something I have no word for, beyond guilt, beyond sorrow, a kind of reckoning with herself. She apologized. She said she should have believed me. She said she didn't know how to undo what had been done. I told her I knew, and that I needed time. My father called that afternoon. He's a formal man, very English in that way, even after years in California. When he apologizes, it means something, because he does it rarely and always precisely. He said, "Charlotte, we failed you. I failed you. Tell me what you need." I said, "Time, honesty, and a seat at the table when the family decides what happens next." For the first time, they gave me all 3. My brother James is in a recovery program in Los Angeles. He is repaying the business. The family made the decision together, myself included, not to pursue criminal charges. That was not an easy decision for me, but it was mine to be part of, and that mattered. James and I are not where we were. I'm not certain we ever will be fully. I can find compassion for the desperation that drove him. What I cannot yet fully release is the silence, the weeks he watched our father look at me with that hollowed-out devastation, watched me lose my access and my reputation and my place in the family, and chose himself over me. That is the thing that lives in me still. Not the accusation, not even the betrayal, the silence. But here is what I will tell you, what I need you to hear if you are carrying something similar right now. The truth does not expire. It waits, in timestamps and signatures and camera angles in downtown Los Angeles bank branches. It waits for someone stubborn enough and certain enough to go and find it. I am Charlotte Whitfield. I was accused of stealing $70,000 by my own family, and a security camera told the truth when no one else would. Go find your footage, whatever form it takes. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and take care of yourselves.